Good Monday evening, meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center with this live update. Taking a look here at the current Doppler radar imagery across the region, we do see some showers and storms around. So I know we've had some breaks, but we also have those storms around they have to contend with. I've been checking here with the chat session to see exactly where some of this action is headed over the next little bit. I know some of you are wanting to keep an eye on this, especially down toward Marion and Flagler counties, because we do have a strong thunderstorm there, some strong thunderstorm action in that area. So let's go ahead and switch over to the other Doppler radar tool. And by the way, we're trying to simulcast again. So if we're having any technical issues on one of the platforms, maybe like Twitter, then go over to facebook.com/CaseyCloudWX to keep watching this update here and maybe hear me a little bit better, because I'm not 100% sure you're able to hear me very good over on Twitter. We're just trying to get some of the bugs worked out. But if you can, and that's great, and just stick with me here on this platform. But here now is that Doppler radar on the area look here. Things you do see in toward parts of southeastern Marion. We even have a little bit of weak rotation here, getting in toward areas further off toward the east, like Lake County here. Not too big of a deal, but we're watching it, and we'll just keep our eyes on this because there is a significant weather advisory in play for maybe winds over about 40 miles an hour here in this zone. So you do want to just kind of keep an eye on this here. Just want to keep you up to date on exactly what is happening, and we'll be here to watch it for you. I'm going to give you another perspective, in fact, of this here as we kind of switch on some of our different radars right now. We'll go ahead and switch things around here so you can kind of get a better look. We'll go, I think, from the Melbourne radar. Let's try that right now. We could go from Tampa or Melbourne, but let's go from the Melbourne radar, as we might be losing a couple frames here as we're switching some things on and off, but you'll be able to kind of get a better look at this here in just a second. So that's the good news about all this. That's the good news. So here's that look now. You do see it on the imagery, some of that accent down here that we're talking about in toward parts of southeastern Marion County. So we'll keep watching that here. We'll continue to track it in the Weather Center. I'll be here just to make sure nothing develops too strong out of that, anything that we need to cover here. But right now it looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and move me back on camera now and continue to look at this situation. Again, we're continuing to watch things. And again, we'll watch here as we get off toward parts of Flagler County here as well. So just kind of stay tuned here in that area too. Again, just continue to track things, continue to watch here as the evening goes on, because we could get a thunderstorm warning, something like that, to develop in this area. But that's the overview there. Let's get back over to the overall scene of things here, the overall look at things, and you'll be able to see these temperatures, 70s and 80s on the board. Some of these areas have had more rain caught air. I know where we're at in the Stark region, we've seen about an inch of rain today, but other areas here are getting a little more, a little less, just depending on where you're at. And that affects the temperatures, of course. Here's your 12-hour estimate. You can see around Stark around an inch or so as we get down toward areas closer toward Keystone, maybe even more like an inch and a half, give or take. They're one of the hot spots today. Southeast Georgia, some heavier downpours as well. And I know we've been watching Invest 98L. I've been talking about it here on our different platforms. And we actually have the center of that as we get further up into towards southwestern Georgia here and getting further up more toward west central Georgia here. As we're looking across the region, we're going to continue to watch this here in that area and see how it does manifest itself, because eventually it could become a tropical system as it does move back over the open waters. We'll look at that here in depth in just a moment. And we also have other stories outside of our region in terms of weather to talk about. I know in the Northeast there's a lot of action here, a lot going on. Even a severe thunderstorm warning here near Washington, D.C., and the severe thunderstorm watch in effect, flash flood warnings, flash flood emergencies around Philadelphia, where there's been life-threatening flash flooding today. And this threat really ramped up. We were looking at marginal risk earlier today, but it went up to a slight risk, and Roy had a lot of action. I know up toward New York they had a thunderstorm warning as well, some flash flood alerts in play closer toward there, so just something to kind of keep an eye on here. But as we kind of move it back down toward our area, again, you see some of the action, see some of the storminess. If you're watching from South Georgia, you see some showers and thunderstorms here, downpours around Thomasville, up toward Tifton, over toward Douglas. You see here northeastern Columbia County also getting into some of this action here as you are maybe headed out and about, just trying to stay safe, of course. But now here's some of those cameras. You'll be able to see what things look like here from a bigger view. You'll be able to kind of get a look and see what FSU is showing off first off here. And you'll be able to see what the sky cam does look like there. And you see some of those cloudier skies overall. It's kind of dark out there, but overall it does look pretty nice here on this Monday, and some of these other areas, and at least in terms of rainfall, we haven't seen too much rain necessarily out toward Tallahassee, not getting into where that flooding rainfall there. Another camera, another viewpoint. Let's take you to the baseball grounds in Jacksonville and see what is happening in over Duval County, and you'll be able to see a similar picture. I mean, we've not seen too much rain necessarily right around downtown Jacksonville. I mean, some areas have got around a half an inch into word downtown, but other areas, they're not far toward the west, over an inch here in that last 12-hour time frame. It's kind of gloomy, but again, it could be worse. I know the sun's been trying to peek through where I'm at, and you can kind of see that trying to peek through here as well. A little bit of a glimmer of hope, I guess you could say, here on this Monday across our region. And we did get lucky. I mean, we did get lucky back on Saturday where those fireworks did get in. We were able to get those in pretty nicely, in fact, across our region. The timing worked out great, a little better than what we were expecting. We did mention that we thought a lot of it would break down here as we got later into the evening, but almost everybody, they were able to have that time frame work out pretty well for them, and that's the good news. But we'll go ahead now and look at some of our graphics, because we are tracking the tropics. I know you probably heard about some of the action there in toward the tropics, and we do have the last advisory here on post-tropical cyclone Edward. It was a tropical storm, but now it has transitioned, and you see 45-mile-an-hour maximum sustained winds. Movements northeast at 38 miles an hour. It is racing. It's way off the northeastern coast here. 1,005 millibars on the pressure there. Nothing too significant in terms of that. Not too low, meaning not too strong of a system overall, but something that has been kind of noteworthy just because of how quickly it evolved here over the weekend here. We weren't really expecting that. But in terms of some other action, we've been talking about this for a while here. Some of the names here on the list, of course, that we're looking ahead to. The next one's now Faye, and I know a lot of you are familiar with that. A lot of you are familiar with that name because back in 2008, it really impacted North Florida and South Georgia. Torrential rain, flooding problems, tornadoes. I remember quite a few tornado warnings that we were tracking with that. It just 12 years ago, I remember losing a couple of days of class there. In fact, the first week of classes there, I think, as I got into Ward High School. Yep, as I got into Ward High School there. So that was intriguing to say the least, in toward that part of August there in 2008. And as we continue to look ahead, continue to kind of look ahead of the list, you see some other names with Watts and Faye. We could be seeing that develop here pretty soon. I know we've been tracking that area over South Georgia, and luckily it didn't get its act together quick enough, but it did look like it was getting really close to becoming a tropical depression there last night. We were thinking it might not develop after kind of mentioning it earlier in the week, but then it tried to get its act together, but not quite. But ultimately, it could get its act together here as it gets off the eastern coast. So that's something to watch. That's something to take note of here, something to be mindful of as we are kind of looking ahead later in the time period. Now, as we get down here further toward the south and east, we have another area we're watching, which only has a 10% chance right now. It shouldn't really develop too much here. It should kind of fall apart as it moves along, but we'll watch it here as we are starting to get pretty active. And I know we see those names. That's the earliest fifth name we've had on the list here in the history of the Atlantic Basin and the records. I know sometimes record keeping, as you get further back, it might have been harder to tell exactly what was developing out in the regions, because these haven't been really strong systems, no hurricanes yet, which is great news, of course. And that's something that you kind of have to factor in too, that maybe we've had years that have been busier earlier on. We just didn't classify these weaker type systems. I'll take the weak systems. In 2005, for instance, we had some really strong systems that were developing, and that had been the previous record there. We've got Hurricane Dennis, Hurricane Emily. We're getting real close to that 15th anniversary of the Hurricane Dennis landfall there as we look out toward the Florida Panhandle. So that's something that is worth noting here, and we'll be kind of giving you some more details on that probably as we look ahead here in toward the month of July, because that was a really early hurricane landfall here, and that was a really, really record-breaking tragic season, of course, as we had Hurricane Katrina later on Hurricane Rita too, as well as we look out toward parts of eastern Texas and western Louisiana there. But let's go ahead now and look ahead on some other things, because we were just kind of making reference here to this area out in toward southwest Georgia, out in the Gulf even. This is what Invest 98 Hour looked like at noon. And I mean, if you didn't know any better, you would think we had a tropical system on our hands here. I mean, this is really well formed, but it's just a surface low. In fact, we were only getting winds in that 20-30 range, it looked like, on the velocities, and that was similar to what we were seeing over the Gulf of Mexico last night. But something interesting, to say the least, something we've been watching here in the Weather Center, and starting to move off here. I'll pop it up, it looks like, real quick again if you're just kind of tuning in. I mentioned this here at the top of the broadcast. I mentioned it here at the top of the broadcast, and we'll be able to kind of see that now here on our other platform. We'll be able to give you the look here as we get further up into toward the state. I'll even put on some of the wind indicators. It seems like it's gotten better organized over land, actually, which is interesting as well. But I mean, you can't really have a system develop over land, though it did happen back in 2016. Our J-name storm did that, in fact. They're kind of intriguing to see, but generally doesn't happen like that, and not expecting that to occur here. But you see some of that rotation there in toward parts of South Georgia that moves out of our area, but we still have that moisture being pulled up by everything here, and that has been impactful. We've had those storms move through earlier across our region, for instance, as we've been kind of taking note of here, and we're still watching some of that action down toward the south and the east. And I'll go over to that system again one more time. You'll be able to see what is happening down here in Marion, Flagler, even Putnam counties. We're kind of watching this action to see if something becomes severe. Right now, just strong, but we've kind of had a cell merger here over the last little bit, according to the Weather Service in this region. So we're watching that here. We're going to go ahead and keep our eyes on that. But back to the graphic system we go now. We'll go ahead and show you what is next here in the rundown, and that is a look here at that day part forecast. You do see those Saturday thunderstorms likely around, those temperatures warming up by the lunch hour, but falling as we get toward 5 p.m. a little bit, as we have more moisture around. That could have an impact here. But let's have that umbrella in hand. I know we've gotten kind of lucky in some spots over the last several days, but I know today, for instance, our luck kind of ran out around Stark. We had 2 days here, where I'm at least, we didn't really see any rain with the high chances, but today we got over an inch, and that's just how it is sometimes. This time of year, we have that pattern, that low pressure there, that surface low, and that kind of brought in that moisture here, as you saw on the Doppler radar technology. And we'll see that rain chance potential stay up here as we look ahead. 70% Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 60, Friday, 60. So you see those staying up. Those temperatures warming up a little, though, as even though they're staying up, overall the rain chances, we will see a little bit of a decline, as you can kind of see here, and maybe a decline also in the cloud cover, because we're going to get more into that typical pattern, and that's kind of something that you need to think about here. We have more time there for us to heat up, cool down, and you can kind of see that noted here in that forecast. And in Tallahassee, Valdosta, you see these temperatures here. You see the overall trends warming on up, and kind of seeing a bigger contrast and more heating there, more clear skies around, and then you see these rain chances trying to fall just a little bit. Talking more about summertime storms, and that can also sometimes lead to more energy around here with that sun, of course, and then that could lead to more severe storms, those pulse severe storms, and that means we'd have to be cutting in here on our different platforms because of that isolated nature of the action there that could produce some severe weather in your neighborhood. So after you're watching, another thing I want to mention real quick while we're on, a tragedy did occur on Friday in toward South Georgia in Colquitt County, the Moultrie area. A 9-year-old girl did lose her life, in fact, when a lightning strike there near a walking trail killed her and seriously injured her older sister, according to media reports. So it's always important, even if you don't have severe weather, when you hear that thunder, you need to go inside. When thunder roars, go indoors. It's a terrible situation. My thoughts and prayers go out to the family there, and it's just something you have to be really cognizant of this time of year. You don't have to have warnings. You just have to have lightning around. You hear that thunder, that's your signal to go inside and stay away from windows there, and just be careful there with that potential. I know this year we've had so much going on, maybe that doesn't get talked about enough just because of the coronavirus, things like that, but it's always an important reminder for everybody. If you're just moving to Florida, maybe you got to, or South Georgia, of course, where this happened, you just got to remember that we have more lightning around here this time of year, and you have to just be really careful, and you really have to just take those precautions. But for now, meteorologist Casey Cloud, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back over on the various platforms. We'll be on Twitter, trying to be on these other platforms as well as we're trying to simulcast our coverage. Thanks so much for tuning in and have a great night.